So we start today's program. Welcome you all to the online session on learning from the essentials. The idea of this program is while the lockdown is in place, there are some essential industries which are continuing their operations, and they must have innovated some of the best practices, keeping in purview of the health aspects and also navigating through the restrictions in place. So we believe we can learn the best practices from these industries and replicate them or modify them for other industries when we go ahead for our business continuity. With this, I would request Mr. Debe Mukherjee, the President Designate of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who's chairing this session, to please take the session forward.
Thank you very much, Angana. A very good afternoon to all of you, and wish all of you very well. Before we commence the proceedings, may I request Mr. Sharbojit Das, our technical moderator, who is also a key resource person of our IT committee of the Chamber and the CEO of Sundew Solutions Private Limited, to please let us know the ground rules from a technical point of view to help us navigate through this online discussion uninterruptedly. Sharbojit, if you would please let us know the ground rules.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. First of all, a very good afternoon to everybody, the speakers and the participants. The equation of managing the webinar will be very simple. We will be keeping ourselves on mute, and the participants are requested to keep the video on the off mode so that we are not heavy on the bandwidth. We will be navigating to the speakers as and when they speak, and they can see them in the video as well. After the designated speakers speak on the required topics, we will be accepting some question answers from the participants. You are kindly requested to put your questions on the chat box, and our team will be curating that. And if you want to address that particular question to a speaker, you can also mention his name, and we will be passing on the required question to the speakers for answering. If you need any help, you can keep writing on your chat box. Someone from the team will definitely get back to you one-to-one. Thank you, everybody. And Mr. Mukherjee, I think you can get started with your address to the speakers.
Thank you very much, Sharbojit. Thank you very much indeed. I think we now know exactly how to go about it. COVID-19 has, I think, hit all of us very, very hard. It has led to, I would think, a huge disruption in our work, in our lifestyle, and to my mind, even more fundamentally, the livelihoods and sheer existence in an unprecedented manner. It has hit us so badly that even to activate an effective crisis response system itself has become a challenge. We in India are now little over a month into the crisis. And I think it is time for us to evaluate how we are responding to the crisis and the lessons we could possibly learn from the essential services that are being provided to combat this crisis in terms of saving our lives, in terms of generating livelihoods, and in a very broad sense, recalibrating our economy. So both in terms of an effective crisis response strategy and plan, and a wider recovery of the economy, of the ecosystem, I think these are twin challenges, or these are two aspects or two questions that we need to fundamentally answer. We have a panel of very distinguished speakers, very carefully chosen, who will be talking to us and interacting with us And we are indeed very happy that our president, our chamber president, Mr. B.B. Chatterjee, is also with us. May I very quickly introduce the speakers? The initial opening remarks, the initial address will be given by our president, Mr. Chatterjee, followed quite appropriately by a doctor, or by the doctor, Professor Dr. Robin Chakraborty, who happens to be the chair of our health committee and also the senior vice chairman of medical hospitals. He will be followed again in fitness of things by Mr. Jayanto Chakraborty, who happens to be the co-chair of our Agricultural and Rural Development Committee and the Senior General Manager of Indophil Industries Limited. And after that, our power man, Mr. Gautam Ray, the chair of our Energy and Environment Committee, and also the Executive Director of CSA Limited. And then again, quite correctly, by Mr. Arnob Basu, the chair of our IT committee, managing partner east of PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers. And Arnob is going to talk to us about the digital preparedness and how the landscape is changing and what the new normal is going to be, etc., etc. Followed by, and indeed a pleasure to welcome you, sir, Mr. Koji Suzuki, Managing Director of Roto Pharma India Private Limited. I think Mr. Suzuki is joining us all the way from Japan, and he is going to talk to us on healthcare, specifically from an e-commerce perspective, followed by our own Mr. Dev Kumar Basu, Chair of the MSME Committee of the Chamber and Director of Zetadel Technologies Private Limited. And he's going to tell us the challenges, the situation, the way forward, and how he sees the larger recovery plan post-COVID-19. Well, at this point, there is no post-COVID. I think we are in the thick of it, at least for the foreseeable future. And finally, we have Mr. P.K. Guha from the pharmaceutical industry, Managing Director of Zuventus Healthcare, who is going to give us a snapshot of the pharmaceutical business and how prepared they are in responding to this crisis. Each speaker will speak for about 5 to 6 minutes, and then we will have a set of question and answer, some interaction, so that we can distill today's deliberations to a meaningful conclusion and maybe chart some sort of a policy, at least for ourselves, for a larger discourse to interface with the government and with other stakeholders. May I now request Professor Dr. Robin Chakraborty to please tell us how the crisis response system is working, what are the challenges we are facing, where we are, where we should be, and what is it that we should be mindful of going forward. Over to you, Dr. Chakraborty. We can't hear Dr. Chakraborty.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Respected our President, Mr. B.B. Chatterjee, Mr. Mukherjee, Mr. Dev Mukherjee, President Designate, and all other dignitaries present here, and in particular Angana and Shubhadeep. So it's a great opportunity that we are together, especially during this period of crisis. So I'm going to talk for about 5 to 7 minutes on healthcare industry, how it is continuing to deliver healthcare services, addressing the challenge of COVID-19. We all know that on March 11, 2020, World Health Organization announced that COVID-19 virus is officially a pandemic after barreling through 114 countries in 3 months and infecting over 118,000 people. And on March 24, Indian Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi announced a 21-day nationwide lockdown with stringent restrictions requiring people to remain at home, and lockdown was further extended till 3rd of May. The lockdown was primarily targeted at controlling the spread of the virus in the community. But at the same time, the equal concern is a trade-off between saving life versus ensuring livelihood for millions of people, especially vulnerable workers, migrant laborers, and low and middle class community and others. Both urban and rural areas were affected. Perhaps the rural areas were more affected by fiscal crisis, an unfortunate byproduct after this lockdown announcement. And in a bid to offer financial support to more vulnerable population, the Indian Finance Ministry announced a stimulus package worth approximately $22.5 billion, which featured in terms of short-term measures, like including promises to ensure food security, direct cash transfer for the poor, and insurance coverage for health workers. So the main issue is to fight against COVID-19 pandemic. India required to ensure a very high intensity of community-based testing, which perhaps India is not able to achieve. Tracing and treating patients at a large scale, all of which require a medical overhaul in the existing asymmetrical model of healthcare delivery in the entire country and all across the states of this country. And given this skewed distribution of healthcare, it is really a steep challenge to forestall the spread of stage 3 of the virus, which most likely has already begun. The healthcare system in India is dependent to a significant extent by the private sector, but the costs associated with any major healthcare crisis require the support of the public sector to ensure affordable healthcare services, which should be provided equitably to all and not just a privileged few. And there lies the fallacy. So when we talk about healthcare, it is important for us to realize and recognize that healthcare delivery does not include hospitals, does not include doctors, nurses, and paramedicals only. There are many stakeholders in the entire system, like pharma industry, manufacturing unit, IT industry, human resources, transport services, both surface and air transport, and tour and hospitality specialty in relation to medical tourism. I don't know whether anybody is there amongst us or not, but it's a very important component for the healthcare delivery system. And if you look at the India's healthcare landscape is a little different. Healthcare delivery industry in India is very asymmetrical model, as I mentioned earlier. And this model is existing all across the states. Regulations and quality control are very heterogeneous in this healthcare delivery system. But to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, India needs to ensure a community-based testing, tracing, and treating patients at a large scale in a perhaps relatively more homogeneous manner. So that is again a fallacy of the structure that you have, which is heterogeneous, and the mechanism that you need is homogeneous. For all these, you require a radical overhaul in the existing asymmetrical model of healthcare delivery across the states. Now, India spends substantially less its GDP than most countries on public health care. Only we are thinking of achieving somewhere between 2.75 to 3% by 2022 of our GDP to invest in healthcare. Private sector deliver an estimated 75% of health services and caters to both rural and urban areas. But incidentally, as the private sector is much less regulated, there is genuine criticism against its dominance in India due to concerns about its cost, equity, and quality of healthcare. So healthcare delivery system, while largely dependent on private sector, the regulation on the quality and the price in particular have deficiencies. And that is a reality. And we have to understand and appreciate that. If you look at the India's healthcare system, public health is primarily overseen and managed by state governments, right? As such, there is substantial variation across the states in terms of how much is allocated for healthcare spending. And coming to the state's responsibility, if you look at the states, there are variations again. For example, in certain states, they work in a model what is called revenue expenditure. Example is West Bengal and Tamil Nadu. On the other hand, certain states, they give more preference to capital expenditure. For example, Maharashtra, Haryana, and to some extent Punjab. The problem is that those states which with preference on capital expenditure are very good in developing adequate infrastructure, facilities, and manufacturing units. Some states also encourage and offer facilities to private sector for capital expenditure. For example, Gujarat. Therefore, there is a lot of pharma industry are there. But in this variation in state healthcare, where the states more revenue expenditure, like in West Bengal, the infrastructure developments of advanced facilities would be slow and would have less priority. More so during pandemic crises like COVID-19, it would be furthermore difficult to build up a facilities on an urgent basis. Synchronization of the entire chain of healthcare delivery industry to ensure a proper management of healthcare during crisis becomes difficult. Furthermore, it is important to remember that during crisis, due to one medical problem, care for other patients, for example, now there is a lot of non-COVID patients, their services should be maintained and their services should not be affected. And volume and need of care of these group of patients, non-COVID patients, are substantial and must be taken into account. So the actual status is, the good news is, at this time of unprecedented healthcare crisis, the healthcare model and the loopholes have been understood very well, both by central government and state government, and they are actually trying to work closely in partnership between themselves and with stakeholders in the private health sectors and public health sectors. The private health sector, not only at the hospital, but much more is the pharmaceutical industry, are in forefront and truly committed to manage the crisis. I have no hesitation to mention that many pharmaceutical industry are actually coming forward to supply masks, sanitizers. They are even they are going to very remote areas, and this is reality what is happening. Me as a doctor, I know. Nevertheless, there are a number of areas which require very special and focused attentions, and these areas are education and awareness of healthcare workers, from public preventive medicines. Doctors of healthcare domain should have engaged much more in number, which is not that clearly visible. Epidemiologists, perhaps instead of working at the back office in India, should have been much more in front screen. A direct involvement of virologists of national reputations, or even very high-level infectious disease specialists with something like DM degree of infectious disease, which we have in our country, probably should have been in the forefront rather than medical professionals, many of whom are completely from different and unrelated areas, who are not true specialists on infectious diseases, and that has to be understood. Unfortunately, some medical professionals are also taking this crisis as an opportunity for popularity. Many areas which are indirectly related to the difficulty in healthcare delivery should have addressed with equal emphasis, which is not happening. So the deficiencies like more testing, as I said, non-availability of sanitizer, masks issues, more awareness of personal hygiene, and very strict action by governance authority. And similarly, manufacturing of drugs and devices, dealers and distribution of this product. I would like other speakers to take it up later on. Transport services, special shipment, loading and unloading of these drugs and other things, with a lot of materials of these products. Inadequate availability of many drugs, even drugs and devices essential for non-COVID patients are in shortage. For example, many patients of diabetes, heart disease, bronchial asthma, cancer patients, they are not getting their drug. There is a shortage of supply of those drugs as well. Certain essential food stuff, for example, wrong message is going through the community, like killing chicken birds brutally, assuming that these are the COVID carriers and transporters, even poisoning water bodies for fish, thinking that this is a COVID carrier, thus depriving the community of important food resources, protein, and essential nutritional deficiencies. Inadequate manpower to handle such crises. Many of these people who are engaged, they are not being properly trained. There was no such training before. Neither there have been, many of them did not have any devastating management training, so they are having problem. So when we as a doctor, we are not doing a proper medical consultation. We are doing video consultation. MSME's involvement and active participation is essential. Hoarding of agricultural products and distribution, that also has to be addressed. Starvation, death, and disease related to such food deficiency. I would ask many people like Mr. Mukherjee, Mr. Chatterjee, and many senior people will remember in 1942-43, very happened because of rice water drinking during that epidemic, during that period, which is unfortunate. We should not sort of having a problem because of nutritional deficiency. Power sector, oil price has dropped significantly in international market. Some consideration for our people need to be seriously looked into, so that some money they could have saved. Financial instability is extremely important. Job insecurity, because it has got a link with health. Non-COVID illness are being neglected in a huge number. Diabetes, heart disease, cancer. Just before this talk, a phone call came to me from a very renowned person in the sports field that his relation is having the water in the heart called pericardial effusion, and I don't know how to manage. Medical tourism badly affected. Widespread testing recently been highlighted by ICMR, but that has to be done. I'm going to finish my talk by giving just two things. One is look at the Kerala model. Why Kerala model is successful? Now, if I look back to my previous talk, there is a relatively larger share on healthcare expenditure as compared to other states. The capital share of this expenditure is far better and not really compromising on the revenue share of the expenditure. Education, health awareness, average affordability are much better as compared to other states. And much more important is decentralization of expenditure, much stronger. Therefore, the urban-rural gap of using that fund for the purpose is minimum. That gap has been minimized and population was benefited. In this connection, I will also bring another example of recently the Bhilwara model of COVID-19 care in Rajasthan. I'm sure many of you know this Bhilwara, 240 kilometers from Jaipur, a place of cotton industry in India. Mr. Rajendra Bhatt, district magistrate, just single-handedly managed, and the Chief Minister, Mr. Ashok Gehlot, is very proud of him because he has given me a free hand. It has become a buzzword today. Daily disinfection, isolation, strict social distancing, house-to-house campaign, monitoring, awareness was extremely important to monitor 1,910 villages, and that becomes, so he became a corona captain. So this kind of engagement of some people as corona captain can also be helpful. And finally, to summarize, what is probably important is fast tracking of implementation of target for public health emergencies within national disaster management plan. Community awareness towards hygiene will have positive impact on a long-term basis. Increasing gaps in care of patients of other ailments, especially chronic disease in short term, can lead to a long-term burden of healthcare, which we should be aware of. Strengthening of government infrastructures and public-private partnerships over next few years, and in near term, ongoing plan has to be done. Internalization of pharma supply chain, and Make in India focus for medical equipment manufacturing of devices with innovation is essential. Medical tourism should be continued, and now it is a downward trend because I see a lot of international patients, there is hardly anything. Increasing use of technology, telemedicine, training of primary health workers on mobile hospitals, mobile van, mobile healthcare service. Facility mapping has to be done in a proper, in a plan, on a long-term plan, not just an ad hoc plan. Mobile healthcare facilities, as I said, we face this homogeneous challenge and focus on sailing through with minimum damage to human lives. There are opportunities to be unraveled for improvement in the healthcare scenario in the country. Finally, before I close, please remember COVID-19 is now, but in September, As a doctor, I'm telling you, please remember in September, this country and perhaps the nation and maybe many such nations is going to have what is known as double barrel attack. Because September is a time when the influenza comes up. And when the influenza comes up, COVID doesn't go. So the combination of influenza and COVID together may cause another catastrophe. That is the reason why we should be much more cautious, much more careful, and we should think today about September as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President Designate, and also President Sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Chakraborty. I know that you finished your talk on a rather frightening note, I would say, when you talked about September, come September, and we might see a very grim picture. We are having this online panel discussion or webinar under very unusual circumstances. And this COVID-19 pandemic has colored, conditioned, and also triggered this the event the way we are doing it, or this talk online. So because of this unusual situation, because of the unusual circumstances under which we are conducting this webinar, I made a departure from the normal practice of asking, as a moderator, asking the President of the Chamber to first deliver as what we call the inaugural address. I thought, because of this unusual situation, it would be appropriate for the health expert to first give us a broad idea of what the situation is on the ground, and then prepare us to actually come up with our views and our thoughts. As the lead speaker and as the first lead speaker, may I request the President of the Chamber, Mr. Chatterjee, to please deliver his address and his initial remarks, which will then trigger discussion amongst the other panel participants. Over to you, Mr. President, sir.
Thank you, Dev. Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes, I think you are audible to me. Yes.
Okay.
You're audible.
Dev, you have done the right thing. You have done the right thing. This is a COVID-19 is a clarion call. Is a clarion call, and I think the savior is going to be as soon as we have the vaccine for it. I think that's the answer, and there are a lot of aspects that Professor Robin Chakraborty has shared, and it's scary, as you rightly say, it's scary. But at the same time, COVID is opening our eyes. Perhaps if we look back, we'll see that we have not paid enough attention to healthcare in this country till now. COVID is opening our eyes on what should be our priorities, whether life is more important or wealth is more important, or how do we balance the two? People may die of hunger, people may die of disease. Now you take care of hunger or you take care of disease. You have to do both as a government. Now, what I just want to share with all of you is that with this pandemic, the definition of essentials has changed. Businesses and brands, they will need to rework and rethink their game plan. What were essential for consumers a few weeks back seems to be of no relevance today. A desirable often became an essential, and we easily justify it to ourselves. Essentials will now be redefined and certainly recast. People will think 100 times before going for anything now. The word caution will always be topmost in their mind. To get into some specifics, you'll see that digital connectivity will be leveraged to the optimum by companies. Even marketing function will use cameras and connectivity to oversee their retail, which till now people were traveling all over the world. to go and look, have a first person account. That will be done now through the digital mode. Even legal departments may not run to courts each time they have a dispute, because they find that even the courts are closed when such a situation like COVID comes in. Possibly their eyes will open to mediation and other alternative dispute resolutions. Accounting and finance functions will get into zero budgeting, because let me tell you, all companies, all entities are going to slash discretionary expense from now on. Focus will also shift post-pandemic on from shareholder returns or owner returns to what the entities are doing for society. Are we meeting societal expectations? You will just see that it is not a government play anymore. There may be PM cares, there may be the CM fund, there may be other funds. There are a lot of funds we are not aware of, but I know that there are a lot of people, lot of entities are pooling in resources on the humanitarian factor. And that's where what I mean by societal expectations. Don't wait. Company, I don't think people will generally wait for a pandemic anymore. They will on their own realize that it's my neighborhood is hungry. I cannot flaunt my wealth. I think that will be a huge learning from this pandemic. Now, the pandemic has given us a scare, but on the other hand, while people are dying due to the pandemic, Mother Earth is rejuvenating. People are breathing fresh air. You hear the birds chirping. Only a few months back, only last winter, people in the National Capital Region were not accepting even an odd day vehicles, taking out their vehicles, flying on alternate days. But that was the old normal. That was the old regime. Today, the Ganges water in Haridwar is fit for drinking. Unimaginable. So necessarily we have to change, and I'm sure some mindset changes will come, which will redefine essentials and our duties, our obligations, not only to ourselves and our families and our own enterprises, but to others, to society, who must hold our hands in this journey of progress. Today's webinar, I'm sure, will throw much more light on the changing definition of essentials and what we should do and what it entails. Should we and how do we go for simple living? Or at least how do we simplify our living? Or should we continue with our simply living and creating somehow more and more wealth? To conclude, I remember a couple of lines from Gulzarji, and which was very telling. जिंदगी में पहली बार ऐसा वक्त आया कि इंसान ने जिंदा रहने के लिए कमाना छोड़ दिया. आज फिर जिंदगी महंगी और दौलत सस्ती हो गई. This is very telling. This is the way I think these are the precursors which will guide us and direct us on the path of progress tomorrow. Thank you for our patient hearing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. That was, I think, a wonderful presidential address, very appropriate to the subject, and the way, sir, you defined, or as you said, the definition of essentials has changed or would necessarily change, whether it be in business and marketing, whether it be in dispute resolution, whether it would be in shareholder value. So the societal transformation will be something which is going to be a real eye-opener, and post-COVID, maybe we will live in a better world. Thank you very much, sir, for giving an excellent address. May I now request the panelists to speak. The first panelist would be Mr. Jayanto Chakraborty. He is going to talk to us about the agricultural domain, and very appropriately, the President mentioned about whether it's a choice between lives and livelihoods, and he said a balanced approach is required, and rightly so. Livelihoods in India, when we talk about livelihoods, there's a huge, huge percentage of people who are dependent, and in fact, the whole country is dependent on agriculture. We are primarily an agrarian economy. And with it also comes distribution system, transportation, logistics. Mr. Chakraborty is going to talk to us a little bit about what the challenges are, what are the lessons we have learned, and what could be the way forward in the immediate future, in the near future, in the immediate future, short to medium term. May I request all our panelists to stick to 5 minutes, please. That will then give us a little bit of time for interaction. Over to you, Mr. Chakraborty.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you, President Mr. B.B. Chatterjee, President Designate Mr. Dev Kumar Mukherjee, Angona, and others. It is really a great platform to share my understanding on the essentiality of agriculture to all of you. First of all, agriculture cannot be an essential item. It is a compulsion. For survival of human mankind, it is the necessity. Whether you are a billionaire, millionaire, rich or poor, you need food around the day. You need at least 2 times a meal throughout the day. So whether there is a COVID or no COVID, whether there is any catastrophe or not catastrophe, or rainfall or not rainfall, India has to produce 298 million tons of grains for feeding the people of India. There is 130 crores of people. So there is no choice. So, and this is a subject which is totally different from the other industries. It is highly regulated by the government of India. Here, policy advocacy is one of the major issues for way forward, how we should address the post-COVID period also. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru once told, everything can wait, but not the agriculture. Because today, we are also getting food, we are getting rice, we are getting all vegetables, potatoes, because farmers are still working in the field. So agriculture cannot wait irrespective of the situations, whatever is COVID or any other disasters also. These people has to work, these people has to feed us also. So this is the basic difference from the others also. Second thing, you cannot produce food as per your own choice. If you have to produce potato, you have to sow it in the month of November, you have to harvest it in the month of February. You cannot schedule the manufacturing of potato as per your choice. You can sow in the month of December and can harvest in June. No, sir. It is not possible. Nature plays the major restrictions here because it depends upon rain, moisture, humidity, and many other agroclimatic factors also. So within a scheduled domain, you have to produce the food requirement for the country also. Now, what are the challenges? Challenges, you cannot manage agriculture work from home terms. You cannot do agriculture from home. Farmers have to go to the field, whether there is infestation there or not. When Dr. Chakraborty told in the month of September, there will be a real problem. That is the most crucial month for the Kharif, when 100% farmers will be exposed to the nature and they have to work for their paddy or for the other crops also. They cannot have other options because that time crop is around 60 to 65 days old. They need the most attention that time also. So the biggest challenge I'm telling you now, the land per unit area, individual is decreasing down because of urbanization. Population is increasing. So you have to produce more food from less amount of field and also with the more nutrition also. So that's why it has become now very intense resource-based agriculture also. And where the post-COVID period is a very challenge, or around the present is a challenge. What are the resources now? Resources are seeds, resources are nutrition, that is fertilizer, that is pesticides, resources are your manpower, your machinery, finance, all those things are required also for this thing. Now, take example, in Punjab and Haryana, wheat harvesting is going on, but there is no manpower for harvesting. What will happen? So this is a big challenge. So how to handle it? So these are the operational things are coming into the picture now. Now coming to the seeds now, you see the basic unique thing is that seed is also produced in a particular geography, and for where you have to transport it to the last mile station to the rural India. So now earlier you have to transport it through the mainly the truck and others. So now government has come out with a way that they are giving the wagons. They are giving the wagons so that one full wagon at a time can carry million tons of seeds to other areas also. So innovation is now the time for the transportation, for the logistics of these seeds also, and that is coming now also. Similar is the case for the nutrition, fertilizer. Huge fertilizer need to be transported now for the kharif crops, which will be starting from the end of June. So how it will reach to the farmers? It is producing in UP, but it will go to the Jalpaiguri. How it will go? How it will reach also? So this is so disruption is required now in the transportations of the inputs also. Now coming plant protection chemicals. You see, here plays China a big role, because China is one of the major supplier of the raw material, even the finished goods for the pesticides to the India also. Now there is, for last 2 months, there is no consignment has started from the China because of lockdown. So naturally, you can see that whatever inventory does have India now for plant protection chemicals, which will take care of maximum June to July, but what after that? So there are two options. One will be acute shortage of some specialty molecules, and there will be we are expecting 15 to 20% price hike of those pesticides which will be coming. And these pesticides are all green chemistry, following the norms of World Health Organization. These are safer molecules, no for toxic molecules also. And these plant protection chemicals save 30% of the produce. If you don't apply it, it will get wasted also. So this is concern of seed, pesticides, and fertilizer. Now comes manpower. There will be a total distortion of manpower, labor in the field also. So that is also a big challenge also. That's why what I foresee in coming days, agricultural mechanization across the country will be the way forward. And so there will be a cooperative farming will start. Small farmers will aggregate their land, and that's why big machineries will come so that these farmers can aggregate to a bigger land and can do their operations with the machineries. But this machinery is the way forward. Nobody can do this thing. It has to come for the benefit of the agriculture also. Now comes another thing is that the digitization. In agriculture, the last 10 years have seen the huge digitization movement. Lots of young entrepreneurs and lot of startup companies are now working in the agriculture also. Coming 5 years, we are expecting there will be a flow of digitization in the agriculture also. Farmers' advocacy will be to the extent of digitalization also. Another thing, what we are proposing, that as because the farmers are exposed to the COVID, so in the crop insurance, that IRDA should include that clause of COVID infection to the farmer also. So this is, I think, our Bengal Chamber of Commerce can advocate these things to the ministry, that this clause should be added for the farming community in their crop insurance, where the major premium is given by the state and central government also. So if I now come to a conclusion, there are the 5-6 points are there. One is the logistics, which will be a total revamping is required. So production of seed hubs should change across the states also. Nutrition need to be delivered last mile without any distortions, for which again the logistics and warehousing will play a major role also. pesticides, Make in India should give the proper thrust for producing quality plant protection chemicals in India. I think that is a policy advocacy government should take a pride. We should not depend on the import of other countries, and for which we should have paid a higher price also. Mechanization is the way forward for agriculture also. And digital applications, which is now the talk of the town in agriculture. So this is also coming to that thing also. And digital agriculture will change the marketing of agriculture produce to the e-mandi platform also. So a lot of things are coming. Ultimately, at the end, I should say, this COVID should change the perception of the farmer. Whenever, if I tell some school student to draw a picture of farmer, he will draw a picture. He's a poor farmer with a dhoti, unshaven, very poor, as if he has today lost the thing. He cannot think a farmer can wear well-dressed, well-shaven, good-looking gun. So I think post-COVID, mental major change which I'm expecting from the society, the guys have produced us the foods, their perception, their picture should be changed. That is the biggest outcome I am thinking from the society and all those things. Thank you very much from my side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chakraborty. I think that was very, very pertinent. The points you made about post-COVID transformational change, a total transformational change in the way agriculture would happen, would be delivered. And so from the point of view of logistics, nutrition, manpower, insurance, most importantly, cooperative farming, and application of digital technology, all that put together. So I think very, very relevant, and certainly from a policy perspective, the points you have raised should be taken up, and we should have a discourse going forward. Our next panelist, Mr. Gautam Ray, Chair of our Energy and Environment Committee, Executive Director of CSA Limited. Mr. Ray, I know you are giving us power, and that is very important, again, from a survival perspective, for every activity. How do you see the current crisis affecting your business as usual? That's question one. And the other question that I have in mind, and I hope you will be able to address, would be, how do you see the dialogue, discourse, and action on energy transition in terms of renewables happening or getting affected by this current crisis? So if you look into the future, does energy transition happen at the pace it should happen, or will it be a challenge going forward? So if you can also throw some light on that and any other points that you deem appropriate. Over to you, Mr. Ray.
Good evening. In fact, and President and the President designate and all the distinguished panelists. It's really a new way of deliberating among ourselves. As we all know, with the lockdown, all manufacturing, most of the manufacturing sector is now closed. And the services, of course, we are receiving the services with a lot of anxiety, be it in the health sector, be it in the home delivery of materials. Basically, there is always an anxiety that if or not. Fortunately, we deliver a service which doesn't have the scope of contamination of COVID till now. Electricity is reaching home safely, and all over the country. It is not the city of Calcutta alone. I'm speaking that all over the country, this delivery of service is being maintained in a very untiring way, I will say, about the people who are working at the front, and touch wood, nothing major disruptive has happened. In fact, anticipating that such lockdown is coming, we have been gearing up, because to generate, we have to have adequate coal stock. which fortunately we could manage. And the demand management also has become very critical because the whole way of consumption pattern has changed with the closure of most of the industries, as well as with the domestic consumption has gone up. And you will not be surprised when I will say that even at the late evening, the peak of the demand is happening. So that's the type of change in the demand pattern is happening, which is an untraveled path, which we didn't know, which was uncertain. We do not know exactly what will happen when, but we have to be ready with the supply. So that's the challenge. The challenge of the electricity, as I have told earlier also, nothing changed, that we cannot store it. So any point of time, we have to be ready with the change of weather, with the change of, temperature, we have to be ready. Now, naturally, we also have been more and more dependent on virtual interaction. And people, in spite of the fact that we are depending on this virtual platform, but this is a very, definitely there has to be a person who will fixing up the breakdown at the doorstep. So bringing people to the generating station, which are remotely located, bringing people for the entire service, which is scattered all over 567 square kilometer of our license area, is a major challenge. And we never thought that how really we will maintain this essential service with almost 1/5, 1/4 of our population. And that's exactly what we are doing now. We have gone through entire process change. I tell you, this is a very good learning process for us, that we have been, you remember, all of us remember, probably in the last 1 year time frame, I was thinking that how many times we have attended seminars speaking on disruption, disruptive growth. We never really thought that such a disruption is coming. And this is something real terms, quote unquote, disruption. We have so many times, coined about the jargon of change management, managing uncertainty. We are really now facing us that opportunity to face really what is uncertainty, what is the change management, and what is disruption. So given in that perspective, we have to completely reorient our processes. Not I am speaking about the fundamental change in engineering and the generation of electricity, but how people will work, maintaining as much as the advisories, like safe distancing, like using the protective equipments. These are all basically the ground level, micro level, hard reality I am speaking of. But the most attitude, question of really making ourselves more disciplined, question of adhering to some SOPs. Now people on their own, at the same time, we are making people continuously aware. This is also a task in the organization. In an organization, large organization like us, how really make yourself changed with the need and with the necessity where you have to be. We are working even for the time when we are expecting the lockdown will be over. We do not know when it will happen. But with the gradual relaxation of what is we are anticipating, how really we will ramp up our activities. This ramp up procedure is also very, very important. In fact, we have started working it. We have started on the question of how really we will build up the behavioral aspects. And here actually, the technology will play a major role. I am not speaking about only IT. I am speaking about the technology. There might be some technological interventions required, which will speak for this safe distancing, managing some work with single-handedly like this. In our industry, there is another very important aspect is the customer. We have to have customer interface. it a question of cash collection, be it a question of going to fix up a fault or breakdown or a new service. So how much I know about that customer, where I am landing, and how much that customer knows about me, it's a trust issue. And that customer interface, whole lot of customer behavioral, interaction pattern, that also has to be thought of. Now I am coming from my own industry. I will take another 1 or 2 minutes. I was thinking that truly, because of, I am not mentioning the name, because of our lopsided development happened in last few years on the question of manufacturing and dependence on one country. We understand what I am speaking of. And because of the change in correlation, what is happening worldwide, India has got an opportunity here. I am seeing is an opportunity to make India as a manufacturing hub. This is number one. Number two, we have to think philosophically the concept of global versus local. Some of the need for a niche area, a niche market, some of the need has to be served from locally. Because at the same time, the global transactions will be required. But at the same time, how much really we can feed our need locally, that's also important, and particularly taking aspects of the agricultural point of view, what has been discussed by earlier speaker. And another important thing in India, I was thinking of that how really we harness our traditional knowledge, traditional skill, cottage-based industry, Ayurveda. Because that's, again, I am maybe deviating from power sector. I'm just highlighting 1 or 2 points what I was thinking, for last few days. Now, before concluding what you have basically asked, that we cannot live the way we are living yesterday. So even in the industry where I am, starting from the production, maintenance, and the delivery, and the retail, everywhere we have to go through process change. Process change is a must, and we have to adopt the new methods. And energy mix, as you are telling, there is a huge challenge for the country. Because the type of investment has been made on the thermal sector, and the whole country is now approximately running 30 to 40% less demand. Now, where to put the energy? You are asking for how much really is there to have a more aggressive energy mix. I will say on the reverse, because post-monsoon, the hydro is coming. What exactly will happen to the huge type of investment, what has happened to the thermal sector, how they will run the plants with 40% load, 50%, there is a technical limitation to come down to a limit. So that is a major challenge. Unless the demand, unless the energy consumption pattern changed and people start consuming differently, it is very difficult to assess now what the energy mix would be. I am basically, I cannot really just answer to your thing. So it is based on what we have to think about our own sector, but we also have to think synchronizing my own sector, my own people's attitude with the country-wise requirement, need, and the change, what exactly we have to do. So that's the challenge. It's not only thinking in my industry, it is also, it has to be synced. Otherwise, it will not be, yesterday I'm speaking, it's not be a symphony, it will lead to a cacophony. So I hope that the way the human civilization has come over the crisis in the past, we will definitely be overcome this. We have to live with the hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ray. And I think that was a very practical approach to the problem and the opportunities that you see, the challenges, of course, and the opportunities that you see coming up, especially when you talked about change management and you talked about disruption. And you said that we are actually experiencing it. We had earlier only talked about it. Now we are experiencing it. And that is what is really, in a way, overwhelming. But at the same time, if we can take the right decisions, we will be able to bring about a transformation which will be good and beneficial for everyone. Our next panelist, Mr. Arnob Basu. May I request Arnob to please share his thoughts, and especially the digital response. Arnob, if I may ask you, what has been the digital response to this COVID crisis?
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee, and all the other panelists and all who have joined into this Zoom meeting. I think there's no denying the fact that this will have a staggering impact on the economy. And let me talk about, my industry in two ways. One is, of course, as Mr. Mukherjee was saying, that there is a huge focus towards digital adoption, which is coming in. A large part of India is being able to work primarily because they have adopted digital in some ways. And the pace of adoption is going to get really accelerated as we, speak. And I think in many cases, people are understanding that, sector by sector, business models are changing, delivery models are changing. What Mr. Ray was saying, the change management is going to be huge. And, there are several examples in front of us. Whether retail will ever be the same again, we don't know. Whether education will ever be the same again, we don't know. Whether hospitality would remain the same or not, we don't know. And if you look at these process changes, as I was hearing some of the speakers talk about, and the first speaker of the day, how Dr. Chakraborty talked about it, if healthcare, how healthcare is provided and consumed, whether that will stay the same, again, most likely not, right? Now, if you look at this change, a large part of this change is going to be enabled by technology. And that is probably something which we need to be prepared for. I think one of the good things is that just like, China is known for manufacturing, I think India is known for technology. And I think that's something which would help us as we go along this crisis and see what is happening. But I think one of the things which we'll also have to see is that, the IT industry has obviously, been working throughout this lockdown. It's been more than a month now of lockdown, if you, calculate it from the Janta curfew time. And the IT industry has probably been the most adaptable in terms of shifting to a work from home, shifting to a work during lockdown model. But as we look at this, I think we'll also have to see that the IT companies, what they're doing. So one part is the IT adoption. The other part is what the IT companies are thinking. And if you think of it, one of the things is that there is going to be a lot of focus on the balance sheet rather than the P&L. I think many of the companies are going to look at how to stay solvent and how to stay, asset light. Even zero profit might be okay for some time, but you have to be solvent. The other thing is that we might remove the lockdown, but we probably need to ensure that there is the right environment for people to come back to work, right? If there is the right environment is not there, then it will be a major chaos. And it can also lead to social issues. Anyway, the lockdown is something where, it's as somebody said before, it's a trade-off between hunger and health. And in many cases in poor countries like India, we are choosing one at the cost of the other. It's not that you can get both from the government, even if the government wants to, just because of the supply chain issues or maybe because of the actual ability to help, right? So it's different for different countries. And if you look at sector by sector, you'll also see that, this change management from a digital perspective is not easy. I can tell from my own experience that when I'm looking at, the teachers who are teaching my kids, they were not, used to teaching on the net. And as they are teaching young kids on the net, it is a difficult medium for them to connect with students, to make them understand, to make them learn. Learning is going to be very, very different, going forward. So that's one part of it, and we know the macroeconomics and what is happening there. But it's also true that when we come to the IT industry and what we are seeing there, we are seeing that IT industry as a whole is a very, very high, I would say, high wage bill industry. It's a people-specific industry, and hence we would have a situation where you have to take care of your people first, right? You can't have, a situation where you let go of the main asset that you have, and which is people in our case. And how do you take care of people? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them engaged in this kind of a scenario? It is very important to understand those issues. For example, we keep talking about work from home. Now, work from home is not just about, having connectivity to the servers and being able to log into the right systems. What is the impact of work from home on productivity? When we look at teams working, the teams are telling us that there is a drop in productivity because there were some instant answers, there were some guidelines which were coming from their managers, which are not coming now. You have to wait for a formal question, formal answer. The entire coaching and feedback process, which was very instant, very informal, has gone now. A lot of meetings we would be doing with our clients, there's a post-meeting debrief, which we would normally just talk to each other, while walking back to the car, which is not happening right now, right? Now, if you look at the other way, there's also a fair amount of accountability and commitment, which has to be maintained by the sector and by the workers in the sector, because it is a question of working very distributed. It's a question of working with a workforce which are primarily millennials, right? And if you look at the millennials, they're not used to this kind of social distancing. So we might tell them that, yes, you need to, be socially distant, but it is a very, very unknown scenario. And, people are actually finding it very difficult to deal with it. So how do you form social groups during these times? How do you keep them engaged? Those becomes very, very critical. The other thing is that how do I, do this bridging through frequent connections? How do I let our time when people can just connect with me and say that, this is 2 hours for me as a manager, just come and ask me any questions. You don't need to worry about whether somebody will think of something or not. The other thing was that, can we calendarize some things into into a ritual, like, a morning check-in, maybe a drink on a Friday evening? Are we creating clear boundaries for ourselves and our families? Because most of the IT sector workers are saying that we are finding it much more difficult to work from home because, we have to have some boundaries which we are not, which people are not, respecting right now. The other thing is that if you do some positive work, a lot of time, if I'm working under, say, Mr. Ray, and I go to him with a piece of work, there are some visual cues which I would see from his eyes in terms of how he looks at my work, which are all motivational factors for me, which tells me whether I'm on the right path or not. None of these are happening right now, right? So these are all issues which the IT industry is grappling with, because the sector is completely people intensive. The sector used to work in teams. The sector is not used to social distancing because most of the workforce is very young, and it also now needs that emotional connection. It needs the empathy. It needs the formal versus informal to be managed. It has to have that balance between control versus trust and humility. If we can do these, then of course the IT industry would come out of it very strong, because as we are saying, what I started with, it would see a fair amount of high demand for the IT industry as companies get onto the digital adoption roadmap in a much faster pace. But one side is the demand side. The other side is the supply side. We need to also be sure that, we are looking at our resources We are looking at our people in a very, very, careful manner. And that would allow us to, sort of come out of this crisis unscathed and far stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Arno, for taking us through the digital transformation. We now have with us Mr. Koji Suzuki, who's the Managing Director of Rotho Pharma India Private Limited. To give a background of Rotho Pharma India Private Limited, it is they have made an investment, a major investment in e-commerce of pharmaceutical, Sasta Sundar. So Mr. Suzuki is here from Japan, as Mr. Deve Mukherjee mentioned earlier. So he will talk about the e-commerce of essentials, particularly pharmaceuticals. To Mr. Suzuki.
Thank you, Anganaji, for introduction. I'm connecting from Japan. I never expected that this can be realized such an ease. This is also another new normal, which brought by the Corona effect, I guess. And people now say, BC, AC is before Corona, after Corona, instead of before Christ, after Christ. Okay, so, and some rightly state this is a new normal, and it's a new thing, and everybody throw into the new environment. And it's a new normal, but the people still hasn't normalized the daily life yet. And we are still struggling how to normalize the situation. And we are the partner, Rotho Pharmaceutical is a partner of sastasundar.com. It's a pharmacy retail business on the digital platform. As you see in the crisis lifetime, the online business is supporting our life a lot. Without risking going out for shopping, we can order and they deliver. Like a Zomato or Uber Eats, and they make a delivery and we can wait at home. But as a partner of the online business at Sasasunda, I understand we also struggled to adjust into the new normal. Drugs are essentials, and after lockdown started, people start ordering drugs as usual, but a lot of things are different. Because of lockdown, employees couldn't come, or the supplies is not delivered. Delivery man couldn't come. At the start of the lockdown, we only need to start with the 10-20% of the employees. Order is stacking. People hustled. Crossing the state border is very difficult. Getting past itself is very difficult. So that even the essential goods business are allowed by the government, by the authorities. However, it didn't start right away. The society needed adjusting time. So what we learned here is digital platform gives a convenience to the life of the people, especially at the time of the crisis like this. However, to run it properly, we have to deliver it. Delivery of the physical goods cannot be done by online. Somebody has to move it from one place to another. So that as a society, it is very critical to keep that system running. Otherwise, online doesn't complete itself as business. That is one thing. Then why the people couldn't move at the beginning? Because there aren't any rules yet. We experienced this for the first time. It's a new normal. And we have to normalize the situation. And when the essential goods business are allowed, a lot of people start moving. You know, people start moving, just they want to go out, they want to take a walk, they want to do the shopping. So people go out, but this time, personal interest is a lot less important than the public interest to keep the society safe from the infections of COVID-19. So what is important here is learning how to behave each person in the society or in the public to protect the bigger interest of the society and public. And to make the people come to work, some families say, "Oh, Father, please don't go. Going outside is dangerous." That is also the feeling of the family who let the bread earner to go work. That also has to be understood. And the society, the workplace, when we go out, it has to be safe. And it cannot be created by one person, but together with the public behavior, with certain protocol, we can manage to keep the society safer against COVID-19. I believe that is the way to normalize the new normal situation for us. And from that point of view, the important thing is education and awareness of the general public against the disease, how it gets infected, how people have to behave to prevent the infections. If we have enough time, ample time to educate people, we can start from the school, small children, wait for a generation that people acquire the behavior. However, this is a very, very critical time. The coronavirus is not allowing us time, enough time to years or decades. Just like Dr. Rabin Chakraborty said, in September, there can be a risk, combination of the flu and the COVID-19 attacking us. So how shall we behave? I think the institution like the Bengal Chamber of Commerce can play a very important role because it has to be led from the adult, not by the children. And the Bengal Chamber of Commerce has certain authority to guide and lead the industry people. From those people, we can start making a change of the behavior, attitude in the society, how to prevent the infections in the society or workplace. And this is a hard time, struggling time to adjusting the systems, behaviors to the new normal. And I think we can achieve it if we collaborate together in the mass level. And if we put together good ideas together under the Bengal Chamber of Commerce, I think it'll be a good opportunity for that to start that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzuki-san, for your address and some very pertinent questions raised. As the next speaker, can I invite Mr. Devkumar Basu, Director of Zetadel Tech. He is also part of our Manufacturing and MSME Committee. And as all of you would agree, that manufacturing forms the bedrock of our capital formation in the industry. So over to you, Mr. Basu, for your address.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good evening, friends. Basically, I am in the business of manufacturing loop barrels and LPG cylinders, both of whom have been in the list of essential commodities. Over and above that, I am in the MSME category. So you can say you are having everything taken together. Now, I will just in short try to discuss how I was manufacturing before and how I have been doing for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Previously, the material used to come. Now we have to go and fetch it. Our material is all from Tata Steel, so we have to synchronize the logistics with the availability of the Tata Steel man, because he is also under lockdown. So then one of the key items in the LPG cylinder is the valve. The last time that I checked my inventory, I think it will run till first week of May. And the items we are getting from Ludhiana or Gujarat, and both the factories are still yet to wake up. So I don't know what is going to happen. Hopefully they will be up and running by then. We are working on a typical line concept, means the output of station X is the immediate input of station X plus 1, and we don't have any space for batch type production. So we have to have the total, our normal rated output is 1000 cylinders a day and 1000 barrels a day. 1000 a day means we have to manufacture each operation in half a minute. In 8 hours, 480 minutes, 1000 is half a minute. And every station will have to complete the operation in half a minute. And a station can have more than one operators depending on the time required for doing the job. But every operation has to be completed in half a minute. Every station has to complete within half a minute. And over and above that, we must have the total complement of workmen so that the 1000 rated capacity of 1000 comes out. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Oh, okay. Now, at this point of time, naturally, we are not having our full complement of manpower because most of the people cannot come. The public transport is not working. So we are having about 40 to 45% attendance, part of which are coming from close by locality and part of which we are housing them in our industrial estate somewhere, and we have to look after their health, we have to look after their fooding, we have to look after everything. So, and our daily production instead of 1000 is really about 400. Naturally, we are having a lower output and higher cost, which means per piece cost is going up. With higher cost and lower output, naturally there is going to be a major hassle as far as the viability of the business is concerned, but hopefully it is going to be for a short period of time. Now, as far as MSME is concerned, this finance minister, MSME minister, Reserve Bank governor, they have all given so many packages of tens of thousands of crores, and most of them are by way of subvention of interest rates or maybe a little additional liquidity. But moment your output, your turnover is coming down and your costs are going up, the banking ratios are getting so cluttered, and the banking ratios are getting so cluttered and are getting so adversely affected that your present loan and credit itself will have to have a relook. And we must have a mechanism by which the present credit itself has to be restructured before any new infusion takes place. Finally, as far as MSME is concerned, I am very scared and I am very apprehensive about the demand. What is going to happen after post-lockdown and post-COVID? Whether there will be enough demand as it was having pre-COVID, particularly in the oil sector, which is so volatile now. So I am really scared as far as oil sector is concerned, which is volatile all over the world. Finally, as far as MSME is concerned, I think we should, in future, focus on items associated with health and hygiene care, electronics, hardware, and agriculture-based items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Basu. Very clearly, the MSME as an industry is, as a sector, is under stress, and you raised some very critical points around, stocking levels, around the need to get the right set of people inside the plants, about the demand which would be there. We all hope. And of course, MSMEs need the support from the government to tide over this crisis. So coming to the next speaker, so we started with the healthcare industry, and of course, our last speaker is also from the health and pharma sector. We have Mr. P.K. Guho, MD and CEO of Zuventus Healthcare. So we felt that any discussion today is incomplete without a pharmaceutical view. So over to you, Mr. Guho.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to convey my heartfelt thanks to all speakers, because not only I'm here as a speaker, but I'm also enriching my knowledge from all of you, because I see that across the industry, people are here. So it's a nice platform, and I'm enriching my knowledge. Now coming to my sector, that is pharmaceutical industry. Let me tell you one thing, that pharmaceutical industry, it starts with manufacturing till the last mile, a delivery, that is to the end users. Now, pharmaceutical industry is a little critical industry, because, it depends on various factors, and various things. Now, if you look at, initial part of the lockdown, we had to go through a very bad time. It was certainly a kind of nightmare for all of us. And though there were assurance from government side that pharmaceutical being an essential item, there will be relaxation to many things. But initial days, almost about 15 days, we had to go through a very rough time. Then thereon, life started easing out a little bit. So manufacturing today, if you ask me, then we are having almost about 75% workforce, and we are going at a rate of 75% of our production, because there is limitation of workforce, and then there are other limitations also, because we don't get our raw materials in time, because this has to be brought from different parts of the country, or sometimes our this packing materials are not available. So these are the factors for which the production is at a level of around 70 to 70% at this point of time. And if you ask us that what pharma industry is doing so far, their workforce is concerned, and how hygiene and sanitization is being maintained, let me tell you one thing, that we have a strong SOP. Even all pharma companies have been having a SOP in the past also, but now we have made it more I would say that stringent, and this starts with loading, unloading to the finished goods, and every individual, those who are working in the pharmaceutical industry today and in our factories today, they are all given with PPEs as well as masks, and every bit of the factory is being, either fumigated or being cleaned with 70% alcohol-based products, sanitizers, and each individual are being sanitized at every point of time, and they are fully covered and they are doing that job. So far the sanitation is concerned, so far the hygiene maintenance is concerned, and when it comes to individual protection also, that is all given by the pharmaceutical industry and pharma companies to their factory level workers and every individual, those who are working in the factory. Now, despite of that, we have got several challenges, because as you know that, if you really look at the entire pharma company, pharma business, then almost 60 to 70% is our field workforce. Certainly, our field workforce currently is working from home. They're unable to, reach to the, last mile delivery level because they are supposed to be under lockdown. Though pharma is considered as essential item, but when we approached many of the local governments or local authorities, our people are not being given with the passes, or they are not being treated as essential item, like essential product which they deal with. They're not being treated like that, so they don't have such kind of at least liberty to reach every nook and corner. So certainly there is a disruption when it comes to the operation of CFAs, when it comes to the operation of taking it to the retailers and all. And one more thing which is becoming little tough for the pharma industry now is your shipment of goods, because most of the shipments are taking place because of by way of that is transport, road transport. And road transports, I'm sure that you must have seen, or in many places there are a lot of articles on that, road transport is under severe disruption because the drivers are not willing to lead the trucks, or they are not ready to go with the trucks because they are fleeing, and they are saying that they are not getting foods, they are being harassed. So there are a lot of such stories floating around. But despite of that, we are managing, as I said, that we are managing to reach as much we can. And this is a real challenging time for all of us, because we are learning the new norms of life, because these were all absolutely unheard kind of situation for us, and we have never witnessed this kind of situation in the past. And now we are witnessing this. But I can tell you one thing, that with these every passing day we are learning a lot, and most of our marketing activities are now digital based platforms are being used today, and we are doing marketing through that. But I can tell you one thing, that our workforce is equally important for us, and we really feel that we need to have such workforce to take things forward. And for the last mile delivery, they are very crucial factor, and they really do that job, because the availabilities of products, the merits of products, the benefits of the products are being are being told by them, and they are the people, those who take it forward. So that particular at least work area is today highly disturbed and disrupted. They are unable to work. They are all working from home. Whatever they can do, they are doing that. But as a matter of fact, these are not being done with the way it should have been done. So I urge upon one thing, that since this is Bengal Chamber of Commerce, you are an interface with the government, at least with the local government, So I would say that the health workers and the ancillary units should be given special passes to deliver, because otherwise if they are harassed, they can't do anything. Then the supply chain will always be disrupted, and they cannot do the justice to the supply chain management, because they are one of the most important factor for the supply chain management. At the same time, now the other authorities, those who are handling this transporters or transportation and all, they should have some policies so that the transporters as well as the truck drivers are not harassed during this period of time. They should be given special permission to enter the borders. They should not be harassed, because otherwise entire country is suffering because of for the want of important medicines. Like Dr. Chakravarti initially said that patients are being harassed, doctors are being medicines are not being available in many parts of the country, and that's true. That's not happening today. Probably 20-30% medicines are not available in the market, and I'm sure that for that a lot of people are suffering today. And if not for corona, I'm sure that for other diseases people will suffer unless these are being restored at the earliest. And I think that even doctors fraternity also should be allowed, because today they are also not getting that kind of platform to start their practices, do their work properly. So they also should be given that kind of platform, and they should be allowed to do their duties in a way by which they can, at least if not corona, they can save people from other diseases, because our country doesn't only suffer from corona. Corona probably could be one of the recent kind of situation, but in our country we have got several diseases. There are a lot of people suffering from different diseases which requires immediate attention. I know some of the people, those who have been suffering from cancer, they have denied chemotherapy during this period. Some of them have been suffering because they are not allowed to have chemotherapy in time. So this is a time when we all should rise to the occasion and see that how quickly we can address these issues. Another very interesting point which I would like to highlight here is that there is a lot of discussion on the prices of the products, whether because of China it will go up or not, whether the availability of raw materials are adequate or not in our country. To be very honest, let me tell you, it's true that China has been the major supplier of the raw materials to this country, and because of their competitiveness, and of course, definitely, no other country in the world today can compete with them in terms of economy as well as competitiveness. So they have been supplying largely to this country also. And recently, almost about 20-30% prices have gone up so far the raw materials are concerned. So I'm sure that there will be little effect on the prices going forward. I can't deny the fact that there will be no such effect. But let me tell you, and I will urge upon that is Bengal Chamber of Commerce, that this is high time for all our industrial bodies or industries to think of one thing, that we need to be self-sufficient and self-reliant, because this is time now that we should really look forward to start doing things in the country. And for that we definitely require a lot of help from the central government as well as from the local governments also, because that's one thing which we require to really be self-sufficient so that we can combat such kind of situations like COVID-19 which we are witnessing now. And I'm sure that going forward, as we all say that this is a new normal of life, we are going to adopt this situation also very quickly. We are adopting, and we are going to adopt this with a lot of hesitation, of course. No one would like to adopt this type of thing, this type of situation, but we have no other choice other than adopting this and going forward with this. And this would be the new norm of our life. And some friends of mine, those who spoke about the digitization or digital application of our most of the activities. I'm sure that going forward we are going to do most of our activities through digital application and all. So that is going to ease our life, but definitely we'll miss out a lot of things which we have been having in the past. So I wish that this COVID-19, one side it has taught us a lot of things which has made us to realize and understand that where we are strong and where we are weak. So probably from this learning we can become stronger in the areas where we used to remain weak in the past, and which we are doing so, of course, but we require help from all. The support should come from all levels, that is from public, government, and of course industrialists also should look at this as an opportunity to become self-reliant and to build the nation in a better way. With this, I thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak on this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Guho, and it was indeed very heartening to hear a very optimistic view as you presented. I think one of the things which still sort of makes me wonder is that the first point which you said, that the essential workers, not just the healthcare but all the essential workers, in many countries they are being celebrated. It's quite a tragedy that in some parts of our country they're being ostracized and they're being stopped. They're not being allowed to come back to their homes. So it's definitely something which we need to correct. Now we have come to the end of each of the speakers, their own views. So we will take a few questions. I know that we have we would just take a few questions. So maybe I'll start with Mr. Jayanta Chakraborty. A question which has come for you is, what do you think could be the role of the chamber in IT-enabled agricultural productivity improvement? What are your thoughts around that?
Actually, in agriculture nowadays, the role of IT is to increase the efficiency of the agriculture actually. So in that case, like identification of the pest or disease, their recommendations, their probable time of infestation, then the weather forecasting, and then there is a big challenge is the marketing of their produce. They don't know what is the price prevailing in different parts of their nearby. So if that platform can give them the access, number one, on the crop husbandry, how they should cultivate their crop with a more accuracy, what are the benefits of those the gadgets, and then basically ultimately it is the earning of the farmer. So if he knows that from which mandi he can get the best prices, that will track him and that will can give him the best mileage actually.
Thank you. So I think thanks for the answer, and I think what you said was extremely relevant. We are from the technology side working with several companies around platforms for price discovery of their products, because I think, as you said, both the agricultural produce side and the agricultural marketing side has to be seen together. A question for Dr. Chakraborty, if you're still on the call. It's quite a controversial question, but I think what the question is that, do you think it is now time for us to shift from our, a lot of money from our defense budgets against probably a weakening neighbor to healthcare? And what do you think the government is doing or going to do post the COVID scenario to make us spend far more on healthcare than on defense?
Right. I think, firstly, I do not think that if you want to allocate more fund to healthcare, it has to be moved out from defense to healthcare. I'm sure the finance ministry will understand much better than any one of us that how this, basically what probably would require a fund redistribution. So redistribution does not necessarily mean that shrinkage of one sector, because defense in India is very important because of a number of reasons, which we are not going to discuss right now. So, but certainly a health division requires more allocation, and that is essential. And in addition to that, I also would like to add one more point is regarding, I think that the pharma industry and even the MSME also should think about having their own way of getting sort of raw material processed in our own country, because that will minimize the cost. We're exporting raw materials from other countries, and that is one of the reasons where sometimes the cost goes up. Second is the quality control is extremely important, specifically for the pharma. I still do not understand there are certain drugs like a very important antibiotic like meropenem can be purchased at 50 rupees, can be purchased at 5,000 rupees. What is the reason, and how the patient who is procuring at the rupees of 50 is different from the patient who is procuring at the rate of 5,000, and what is the reason of such differences? That also has to be minimized.
On a call, anything I call back.
Hello, yes.
Arnav,
Yeah. So I think the next question probably is for Mr. Guho. One of the questions we are getting is that while online marketing for pharmaceutical products is available, in terms of the last mile of delivery and online booking and delivery of medicines, this has been very badly affected. What are your thoughts on that?
As I said, that our people, our field force is unable to move. Now they are working out of their home, which is not the normal thing to happen in life, and they are unable to really take a real understanding of the market, what is happening in the retail shop, because there are thousands, at least in our country, there are more or less 1,000 organized companies, pharma companies. There are probably 50,000 brands available in the market. So retailers may not keep all those things in their retail shop. So one of the key job of the front workers of our this workforce is to understand the need of the retailers and to see what they need, and and then to cater that need through the chain of stockists and distributors. So that is being paralyzed for a long time now, and that's not working at this point of time. So this type of disruption, you see that a lot of important medicines are not available. It is at the whims and fancies of the retailers. Whatever they have, they are either giving or not giving. And I don't blame them also, because it's difficult time for them also. But since the workforce of the pharma industry used to work for them also, that being inoperative now. So definitely there is a crisis like this.
Thank you, Mr. Guho. I think one of the other questions which has come and which I can probably quickly take is that I talked about digitization in the area of education. I think the question which has come is that how do we sort of extend that to people in remote areas, and how can this be more broad-based for people in the rural areas? I think many of you would have seen that the announcement which came yesterday around Facebook taking some stake into Reliance Jio. I think we would probably see a lot of investments going into connecting India, or connecting the remote parts of India from the telecom providers. And as they take on the responsibility of connecting India, I think you would see more and more strategic partnerships coming up, whether it is in the area of education, whether it's in the area of small micro business, whether it's in the area of microfinance, of companies taking advantage of that backbone and reaching out to the poorest sections of our society and getting each of these services available to them. So that would be my answer to that. So I know that we have run out of time and it's about close to 6 o'clock. I did see Mr. Mukherjee back in the call. So I would hand it over back to Mr. Mukherjee, President Designate of the BCC&I. Mr. Mukherjee, over to you.
I don't know. Am I on the call? Am I on the call? Where?
Yes, Mr. Mukherjee, you are audible. We can see you and we can hear you.
Oh, you can see me, but I can't see anybody. Sorry to have dropped off like that. Maybe it was nature's way of telling me not to participate, or certainly to go come out of the deliberations. So I take it there was a meaningful interaction. The president wanted to make some observation. Could you please let in the president, and he wants to make some observation now?
Sure, he has access.
Yeah. Okay. What I wanted to basically, in conclusion, make a couple of comments. It's, you see, Arnav has talked about strategic partnership, the Jio with Facebook, etc., etc. The agri side, we see that we need cooperatives coming in so that there's aggregation of land holding, which will benefit the Indian farmers. So on that note, the whole world is looking for a vaccine for COVID. Now, do we see that there will be global cooperation, so that if we can hold our hands together and everyone is eagerly looking at vaccine, whichever country comes out with it, I'm sure it will be available to all the countries. Similarly, in technology side, in IT side, in defense side, even in agri side, where there are gaps that can be fulfilled by any other country, I think this is time COVID should open our eyes globally that we are there for you and let us do something for you. In the process, I'm sure we will benefit. If that is the mantra that we can carry forward, I think COVID would have played a very, very positive role in the lives of particularly those who are economically challenged, and also in the life of those who want to spend the rest of their life happily without fear.
Dr. Chakraborty,
Absolutely.
access.
That's absolutely right. I think that's a fitting ending, closing remark, because in the realm of international geopolitics, a global resilience alliance is absolutely necessary. A resilience alliance for such a pandemic. This is how countries can really come together as a response to this pandemic, and a resilience alliance amongst the global powers would be something that one should really look forward to. And let's hope the world leaders think it, take it in the right spirit and think it the right way and make things happen. Global cooperation in this regard is absolutely necessary. Thank you, sir, for this observation. And I think it's...
Mukherjee, Dr. Chakraborty wants to pitch in. So, Dr. Chakraborty, if you are audible.
Yeah, I think I just thank you, Mr. Chatterjee, that you raised this point of vaccine. But I think I should make very clear to everybody listening to this program that vaccine is not that simple the way we think. I'll just in about 30 seconds, I'll explain to what exactly happens. To have a vaccine, you need to identify the genome. Genome has already been identified by January, and people started working on that. But only during end of May, something like 3rd week of May, 50 volunteers, they are going to put vaccine. Yeah. But we need to understand very clearly, these volunteers must not have any degree of COVID exposure. They should be COVID neutral. And then they will batch them. First batch is 70 to 75 and above. Second batch is 60 to 70, then 50 to 60, like that. In that batch format, they have to enroll 5,000 volunteers who are completely COVID neutral. Then they need to be observed for 6 months, at least, if not more, to ensure that they do not get affected by this COVID infection. This is a publication came in Lancet, maybe yesterday or just yesterday, day before yesterday. Oxford University is probably leading the whole program at the moment. They got about more than 20.2 million pounds for this project. But that is what exactly, but that is the answer. But at the same time, we need to understand that COVID virus is a little different virus. It is a reverse transcriptase virus like HIV, but it's a positive stranded virus. And if we see, when you go for blood test for HIV, they always do 2 tests, HIV-1, HIV-2. We only know COVID-19 today. By the time the vaccine comes, you will see there are 4 strains of vaccine, COVID. So again, you are in crossroad. So, but vaccine is the answer, but it will take some time. It will not come overnight. That is the reason it will take some time, but we are all hopeful.
We are on vaccine like you can have COVID-19 and different strains, maybe 4, 5, 10. But if the global cooperation is there,
yes,
then
exactly.
Then gradually we'll be able to get into grips with everything.
Correct. And in fact,
that is the positivity that one observes, the way the engagement, and India is finding a place of mention in this whole COVID episode.
Yes. No, there is a good global cooperation for this. There's a big challenge and everybody is cooperating.
It's laying down the path. One is hopeful that in all other areas, maybe it starts like someone commented, it starts in fear, not in happiness, but at least let it start. Then we can move on to other spheres where we know that, hand-holding is what we are supposed to do. Thank you. It's and Dev, you can come in now.
No, that's fine. I think that was a good understanding and a very good observation, sir, that you made. So let's look at the positive side of things, and let's hope that we get over this crisis. What is, have we gone through all the questions? Do we come to an end? I was out of the loop for a while.
Yes, Mr. Mukherjee, we have gone through the questions. So maybe just the closing comments from your side.
Yeah, I think a very appropriate, very timely and appropriate webinar. We understand, from whatever I could understand, we understand the severity of the crisis. We understand what the challenges are. We have highlighted the issues, the problems. We understand how the societal transformation, we are certain that there's going to be a huge transformation. The rules will change. And all in all, let's hope that the recovery is good and for the betterment of people, for the good of people. And that's the important thing. So one, as I said right at the beginning, one is the crisis response strategy, which I hope we are being able to put in place and see that the pains are not too much, are bearable, and that we come out of it. I mean, I can't say we'll come out of it totally unscathed, but at least we come out of it. And we have a wider recovery plan, which will help us to make the world a better place to live in. And let's all build a strong, I strongly feel a strong resilience, a global resilience alliance, so that in future such tragedies, such untoward incidents can be dealt with firmly, and we can bring in goodness in the world.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much, all the participants, all the panelists, for your time. And it was indeed a pleasure. Thank you, Mr. President, for your very active participation. And thank you, Dr. Chakraborty, and all the other speakers. Dr. Chakraborty gave us a very good overview and what should be done at the policy level. Mr. Chakraborty told us about the agricultural side of things and what should be done. Mr. Ray told us about the real practical side of things. Arnob, of course, I couldn't hear you. I went out of the loop and I couldn't hear the other speakers. But I'm sure all in all, it went off quite well, and we have understood what we should do going forward. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, and have a very good evening. Stay safe, stay well, stay safe.
Thank you.
So thank you all. I can see the questions, the queries in the chat, which of course encourages us to do more such sessions like this. So we actually close this session here, but I understand there are some of our friends from media fraternity. We would request the speakers to please stay on. And our friends from the media, if you have any query, we can have a session with the media only now. Thank you. We would request Ms. Mala Dasgupta from Grey Matter PR, who takes care of our media relationship, to please coordinate.
I guess Mala Dasgupta is not in the call right now, so. Angana, can you hear me?
Stay on, or do we leave the meeting?
I think then we can conclude the meeting.
So thank you
I
very
mean, the
much.
meeting was concluded, then we need not have to have a separate session for the media. In case there are any query, we will connect with the speakers offline.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Angona. Thank you very much, Sharbojit, and the Secretariat, my colleagues from the Secretariat for putting this up. I'm extremely sorry that I went out of the loop. Nature played truant with me, but I feel happy that I could come at the concluding part of the webinar. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody. So we are signing off on the webinar right now.